This is Dr. Sandra Brown. I'm an ophthalmologist in North Carolina, and I have no financial conflicts of interest. I'd like to bring to you Part 3A of You Won't Eat GMO, but You'll Put This in Your Eyes, the show at Vision Expo West. And this show stars the one, the only StimulEyes, and also introduces Amdrop, which you'll see in Part 3B. But Amdrop is relevant to our story in Part 3A. First, the one, the only StimulEyes. I checked the trademark registration for StimulEyes, and the registrant is M2 Biologics. And there weren't any previous registrants, which means that M2 Biologics has always owned the name StimulEyes. This is a slide from one of the earlier StimulEyes talks. It explains how amniotic fluid gets from Florida to your eyeball. StimulEyes is actually contract manufactured by a company called Neobiosis. It is marketed by M2 Biologics, who sells it to your eye care provider or sells it to Truax Patient Services. Their motto, we don't make it, we just ship it. Your eye doctor will then, quote, prescribe, close quote, the product by notifying Truax Patient Services that they should give you a call, get your credit card number, and ship it. Or your eye doctor can actually dispense StimulEyes to you directly in his or her office if your doctor has purchased a bulk shipment. We need to take a look at just exactly what kind of entity we have in M2 Biologics LLC. It's a joint venture between the McGee Group, which has manufactured eyeglass frames for several decades and therefore has vast eye clinic connections, and Novanet PPO, which is the largest southeastern U.S. preferred provider organization. Whew, that's a mouthful. Just a PPO, let's say that. And they have large optometry and ophthalmology provider panels. So you might say that this is a very sensible arranged marriage. The problem is Novanet does not have any FDA compliance officers in their C-suite. And McGee doesn't provide any management info. Maybe that person is hiding on their payroll. You can check out the Novanet management team yourself. I really think you should, because it'll give you some idea of who runs Novanet and what their skill set might be, or not. So this was heard in Las Vegas because the McGee Group was at Vision Expo West, which is exactly where we would expect them to be because Vision Expo West is a lot about products. Eyewear, contacts, devices for testing, devices for treatment. It's gadget land. And what was heard was that StimulEyes may go for an over-the-counter daily med listing like their competitor behind the blue box. So StimulEyes, the next pretender over the counter. And if Snell could build up enough velocity, which I think is unlikely, he would bang his head against that brick wall. For more information on pretender over-the-counter eye drops, see the video Diagnosing Scam Pharma Part 4. On the Thursday after Vision Expo West, I had a happy moment. I was researching my new headache, Amdrop. With little hope, I entered warning letter amniotic fluid eye drop. But to my surprise, I found this. A new outfit, Biolab Sciences Incorporated. A warning letter, which was written on August 23rd of this year. So pretty recently. I thought I'd read that, check my work, make sure my PowerPoints were in alignment with the warning letter. But I found something even better than validation. And I'll get to that in a moment. But first, doing the due diligence, I checked to see if this Biolab Sciences was actually registered as a human cell and tissue establishment, and they were. Okay. But this was the what moment, because in that warning letter, I found StimulEyes. Wow. I immediately had to text Rebecca, because it turns out that the original manufacturer of StimulEyes was Biolab Sciences Incorporated. This has to be M2 Biologics' product because StimulEyes is trademarked to M2 Biologics. There's not a West Coast StimulEyes and an East Coast StimulEyes. It's the same thing made for the same company. Harkening back to some of my previous PowerPoints, we know for sure that we can all stop calling StimulEyes a tissue, despite the desire of the manufacturer, which uses tissue, allograft, tissue, all tissues, allograft repeatedly in its marketing and package insert. But guess what? The FDA says that secreted bodily fluids, such as amniotic fluid, are not considered to be tissues. Not a tissue, not a tissue. So just get over it. Quit trying to quote Section 361 or 21 CFR Part 1271. Different manufacturer, same federal laws. Let's call StimulEyes a biologic drug. It says it right in the warning letter. Amniotic fluid intended to treat diseases or conditions in humans is generally regulated as a drug. So basically, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act tells us that StimulEyes is a drug. The Public Health Service Act tells us that it's a biological product. So if we add them together, we get a biologic drug. I love reading United States Code. But, I kind of taught it to myself. So I guess I'll out myself a little bit here and say, I read the code myself. I read analysis of the code. I talked to the FDA, and then I started making these PowerPoints. And there was always just a tiny, tiny bit of fingers crossed that I hadn't made some cataclysmic mistake, which is why I was using disclaimer slides. But this warning letter was very affirming that what I've been talking about to you and to manufacturers who are clearly tuning in, the way I've been analyzing and understanding the code is actually correct. And by the way, M2 Biologics knows this, because right there on their website, they describe StimulEyes as, quote, regulated as a non-HCTP biologic. Well, if we take out the non, because the sentence contains the same meaning without it, what we get is regulated as a biologic. It sure is, guys. Amniotic fluid equals a biologic drug, which cannot possibly equal an over-the-counter drug. Currently, StimulEyes does not have a daily med listing at all. Motto, we're just invisible. But if they were going to get a legitimate daily med listing, it would have to be as a biologic drug. That's the only way that StimulEyes can be lawfully marketed. And to be lawfully marketed, it has to have a biologics license, which it's not going to get unless it undergoes 3-phase clinical trials under FDA oversight, which I really don't think is going to happen. I had to throw this in. This is something out of one of those business trade journals where StimulEyes says, adherence to applicable FDA regulations assures the safety of StimulEyes. Evidence? 15 testimonials. The original title for this was So Not True. But you've noticed me blue boxing, and that's because I got a cease and desist letter. So I'm trying to be a little bit more polite. New title, Robust Evidence is Lacking. This had to be a real bummer for M2B. On November 11th, they started advertising, and on August 23rd, a year later, their contract manufacturer got inspected. And for more information on neobiasis, see the videos You Won't Eat GMO Parts 1 and 2. Well, how could this tragedy occur? It turns out that Biolab Sciences is captained by a guy named Bob McGuire. He's the president and CEO, and he gives us the origin story. He was in the telecommunications industry, and I would guess that Mr. McGuire did not avail himself of the services of one of those DC law firms that specializes in FDA regulation, because this is what it says right on the Biolab Sciences website. Biolab Sciences has concluded that Fluid GF, which is their amniotic fluid product, meets the requirements for lawful marketing solely under Section 361 of the Public Health Service Act. And those of you who've been watching my videos already know and are nodding your heads or shaking your heads or whatever your negation movement is, that this is simply not true. A DC law firm who saw that on this guy's webpage is going to say, keep your money. You don't just get to say this stuff and have it be correct. And this statement was directly and profoundly contradicted by the warning letter. It's such a strong contradiction that it's really actually hilarious. Biolab Sciences actually got an award in 2021 as the Arizona Bioscience Company of the Year. I think that AZ Bio maybe got a little ahead of themselves on that. So now I think we actually have enough information to start diagnosing regenerative medicine eye drop manufacturers because they seem to have very similar features. These are businesses which are founded and operated by individuals with no background in health sciences, let alone pharmaceutical development. Their backgrounds seem to be money, IT, sales, money, phones, eyewear, healthcare provider networks, and money. And Snail and I were thinking about this. Snail proposed that there might be an Uber scammer out there who talks these guys into financing regenerative medicine companies. And I think Snail's probably right. I think that there is somebody out there who finds individuals who have some windfall profits or stock options that they've cashed out and makes a pitch, turnkeys the clean room, which is not very clean, sets up the HTTP registration, cooks up the language about the Section 361 marketing, and then that consultant takes the money and runs. Just remember this. Amniotic fluid is not an over-the-counter drug. Never, ever. So if StimulEyes does suddenly pop up on Daily Med with an over-the-counter drug listing, you'll know that it's pretender. Be smart. Buy drugs from real drug companies. Sometimes your options come down to big pharma or scam pharma, to which Snail and I say, we know which one we'd pick. Thank you for listening.